As the Rock drives through a desolate desert road, he stops at a gas station to grab some snacks. Unbeknownst to him, 4 escaped prisoners lurk nearby, their minds poisoned by prejudice and hate. Seeing him alone, they seize the opportunity to attack. Completely unaware they've just provoked the world's toughest fighter, what happens next will teach them the lesson of their lives. Subscribe and like this video to see how the story unfolds. Like a scene from a western, the desert sun beat down upon the silent, scorched landscape with merciless ferocity. The heat waves, shimmering mirages dancing upon the tarmac, transformed the lone highway into a sweltering catwalk for a man seeking solitude and peace. For Dwayne, "The Rock" Johnson, the open road was a refuge, a sanctuary away from the piercing spotlight of fame and the cacophony of the celebrity world. Here, in this arid oasis of asphalt, he could shed the burden of celebrity and simply exist. Up ahead, like a beacon in the desert, a lone gas station stood, a relic from a bygone era. The old, flickering neon sign flickered with the irregular rhythm of a dying heartbeat, the dim letters spelling out gas and fuel in a faded, forgotten font. A rusted ice machine, once a destination for weary travelers seeking a frosty respite from the sweltering heat, sat abandoned, as forgotten as the station itself. With a growl of revving engines and the crunch of tires on desert gravel, Dwayne Johnson's sleek black SUV glided into the lot, its arrival an oasis of luxury amidst the dusty stillness of the desert. The Rock stepped out, his chiseled physique honed from years of grueling workouts, radiating power and presence. The tight gray t-shirt clinging to his muscles like a second skin accentuated the sheer magnitude of his size, his shoulders broad enough to block out the sun. Unbeknownst to The Rock, danger lurked in the shadows. 4 convicts fresh from the bowels of a high-security prison, their bodies marred by the crude, inky marks of incarceration, and their souls hardened by years of twisted brutality watched from the darkness. Their eyes, hungry for violence and thirsting for blood, tracked The Rock's every move, calculating their approach like predators stalking their prey. A vicious escape, orchestrated with cold-blooded precision and fueled by an unquenchable thirst for chaos and destruction, had granted these convicts their freedom. But their thirst was far from sated. Driven by the primal urges of killers on the run, their bellies groaning with hunger, their tongues swollen with the need for sustenance, these convicts were feral, volatile, and on the hunt. And in the solitary figure of The Rock, they saw not only a means to an end, but a target to unleash their pent-up rage. At the helm of this deranged crew, like a ship's captain guiding his mutinous crew through the treacherous waters of mayhem, stood Jackson Briggs, a man whose presence radiated menace like a black hole sucking in all light. A bald-headed behemoth, his neck an inky tapestry of the darkest symbols of human evil, the swastika emblazoned on his flesh a testament to the rotting rot of his soul. Jackson's size was matched only by his racism and hatred. In the cramped, rancid confines of their prison cells, these psychopaths had nursed their delusions, nurturing their hatred like a precious flower, fed on the rotting fertilizer of their own twisted minds. And now, their opportunity for revenge had landed in their laps, a gift from the devil himself, a chance to release the volcanic rage that had festered inside them for far too long. In The Rock, they saw not just a victim, but a symbol of everything they despised: strength, success, and racial equality. And their retribution would be swift, brutal, and merciless. Jackson's lips curled into a wicked smile, revealing teeth stained with years of tobacco and meth. His eyes gleamed with a sinister, almost sexual hunger as he watched the unsuspecting Rock saunter into the gas station store. His sneer dripped with vitriolic venom, each word seething with racial venom, like the venomous hiss of a rattlesnake. "Look at that big dumb ape," Jackson snarled, "walking around like he owns the place." Zane, his teeth gleaming like jagged tombstones in a graveyard of oral neglect, grinned back at Jackson with the lecherous smirk of a hyena. His voice, like a rusty nail being dragged across a chalkboard, was punctuated by a cruel chuckle. Let's take his ride, Zane rasped, his breath a miasma of alcohol and rotting teeth. Show him what happens when you strut around like a big shot in our territory, and then we'll put him in the ground where he belongs. Like a pack of feral dogs feasting on a wounded fawn, the convicts sprang into action. The sound of slashing tires, shattered headlights, and the telltale hiss of the spray can, accompanied by profane whispers and cruel laughter, created a symphony of destruction, a twisted orchestra of anger and hatred. The racial slur and uppercase F in the alphabet of prejudice scrawled across the once gleaming, pristine surface of the SUV's driver's side door completed the desecration, a sinister signature etched in silver paint. The Rock, his stride confident and self-assured, returned to the parking lot only to be met with the horrifying sight of his once pristine SUV, now defiled with graffiti and vandalized beyond recognition. His jaw clenched with a mixture of fury and shock, his lips pulled back in a silent snarl revealing a row of clenched teeth. And then, emerging from the shadows, like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the convicts stepped into the open, their twisted, malevolent laughter echoing through the deserted gas station lot, a wicked hymn of mockery and provocation. The sound of bone against bone as Jackson cracked his knuckles with the calm deliberation of a man preparing for a brutal battle sliced through the tension-filled air like a blunt knife. His words, a verbal uppercut fueled by the stench of bigotry, punctuated his advance towards the Rock, each step filled with the cocky, swaggering confidence of a man who had never faced true opposition. Jackson, his mouth curling into a hateful smirk, his eyes glinting with cruelty, spat out his venomous words with malicious intent. The gas station clerk, a wrinkled old man whose eyes had witnessed the slow decay of the world around him, froze behind the counter like a deer caught in the headlights of oncoming danger. The Rock, his face a mask of stoic composure, unreadable and immovable as granite, remained unflappable in the face of Jackson's provocation. His gaze, unblinking and razor-sharp, fixed on the hulking form of his enemy, sized up his opponent with the cool precision of a surgeon. Zane, his lean, sinewy body coiled with tension, the blade of his knife reflecting the dull light of the desert dusk, leaned against the gas pump with the arrogant nonchalance of a man who'd seen violence and savored it. His voice, like a rattlesnake's warning rattle, hissed with the same cold menace. "Yeah, see that car of yours? It kind of looks like the one we was looking for," he spat out, his tones steeped in racial malice. "And you? You don't belong here, boy." The Rock, his movements as deliberate and calculated as a military commander's, took a single measured step forward, his muscular frame coiled with potential energy like a taut steel cable ready to snap. His voice, the well-honed instrument of a veteran action star, carried the quiet, unmistakable authority of a man used to being obeyed, his tone a razor-thin threat wrapped in a thin veneer of calm. "I'll give you one chance," he said, his eyes boring into Jackson's like searchlights in the night. "Walk away." The convicts, their contemptuous laughs echoing in the desert air, relished in the growing tension like a dog enjoying a fresh bone. Jackson, eager to punctuate his dominance, began his verbal assault, his words dripping with racial hatred, his mouth twisted into a vicious snarl, but before he could complete his sentence, the Rock's right hand, a swift and deadly extension of his will, launched forward like a guided missile. Jackson, taken completely by surprise, barely had time to register the flash of movement before a thunderous explosion of pain erupted in his face. The Rock's iron grip, forged in countless hours of grueling workouts and polished by the brutal demands of Hollywood action scenes, closed around Jackson's throat like a vice. Jackson, suddenly finding himself hoisted into the air like a rag doll, his feet flailing and grasping in vain for solid ground, gasped for breath, his eyes bulging with terror and pain. The Rock, his face now contorted into a fearsome mask of fury, his eyes ablaze with the fire of retribution, spoke with the commanding authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed, his words dripping with the cold finality of justice. "Looks like you don't understand," he snarled, his voice booming like thunder in the desert sky. "I am in charge now." Jackson, still dangling helplessly in the air, his lips turning blue from the lack of oxygen, struggled to comprehend the sudden reversal of power, his eyes wide with shock and fear. With a bone-jarring thud, the rock slammed Jackson onto the hood of a nearby car, his immense strength crumpling the metal like tissue paper, the sound of crushed steel blending with Jackson's agonized groans. The trio of convicts, caught off guard by their leader's sudden defeat, stood motionless for a heartbeat, frozen in disbelief. And then, like the snap of a breaking branch, the spell of inaction was shattered. As Mac launched his attack, the tire iron glinting dangerously in the fading sunlight, the rock's reflexes, sharpened by years of intense training, kicked into overdrive. With a swift duck, he evaded the deadly blow, the wind, generated by the tire iron's arc, ruffling his hair as if to warn him of the danger. With a well-placed counterpunch, the rock struck Mac's ribs with devastating precision, the crunch of breaking bones sounding like the crack of a rifle shot. Zane, his eyes glinting with murderous intent, lunged forward, the knife held between his fingers like a venomous serpent. But he underestimated the rock's cat-like reflexes, honed by countless hours of stunt training and fighting choreography. The rock's hand, swift and sure as a hawk's talons, clamped down on Zane's wrist, his fingers wrapping around the delicate bones like a vice. With a swift twist, the knife fell from Zane's grasp, its blade clattering harmlessly on the dusty asphalt. Roy, a hulking behemoth, towering even over the rock's impressive stature, swooped down on the fallen metal pipe like a predator pouncing on its prey. With a roar of fury, he swung the pipe overhead, aiming to crush the rock's skull like an eggshell, but the rock's forearm, as solid and unyielding as granite, intercepted the blow, his sinews rippling beneath the taut skin of his arm, the impact reverberating like a thunderclap. The rock, possessed by a primal force, channeled the full force of his Herculean strength. With a deafening roar that seemed to shake the very earth, he lifted Roy's massive frame into the air with alarming ease, as if the hulking convict weighed no more than a sack of potatoes. The air rent with a terrifying crack as Roy's body was propelled through the windshield of the nearby truck, his flailing limbs sending shards of shattered glass flying like lethal confetti. As the final act of this bloody showdown approached its finale, Jackson, a broken and defeated shadow of his former self, stood alone amidst the carnage of his gang's failed attack. His legs trembling like aspen leaves in a hurricane, his face a ghastly mask of terror. Jackson stared at the rock with eyes that begged for mercy, pleading for his life like a drowning man pleading for a lifeline. Jackson, his desperation bordering on madness, fumbled for the rusty revolver hidden in his waistband, a last-ditch effort to turn the tables on his adversary. His hands, slick with sweat and fear, trembled like leaves in a storm as he raised the pistol, a silent prayer for deliverance echoing in his mind. You don't move, you big gorilla, or I'll—" With a speed that defied the laws of physics, the rock was upon Jackson, his massive body seeming to compress space and time. In a blur of motion, the tables were turned, the once arrogant convict now the one cowering in fear. The cold steel of the rock's gun pressed against Jackson's temple, its muzzle glinting in the fading light of the day. The rock's voice, a low growl filled with a lifetime of fury, rumbled like a volcano about to erupt. With a precision strike that could rival the strike of a scorpion's stinger, the rock delivered a devastating palm strike directly into Jackson's solar plexus. The impact, devastating in its intensity, sent Jackson reeling backwards, his breath erupting from his lungs in a gust of panicked air, his limbs collapsing under him like a marionette with its strings cut. On his knees, Jackson fought for air, his eyes pleading with the rock for mercy, his face contorted in a mixture of pain and fear. The rock, a hulking silhouette against the fading sun, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of a steam engine, stood over the fallen Jackson like an avenging angel of wrath. His gaze, locked on his target with the intensity of a sniper's laser, revealed the fury that boiled within him, a molten core of volcanic rage ready to explode. The Rock, with the tone of a judge pronouncing a verdict. You had your chance, now you're going to pay for it. Jackson, realizing the futility of his attempt to escape, desperately tried to crawl away, his arms scrabbling at the dusty ground like a wounded animal. The Rock, relentless in his pursuit of vengeance, seized Jackson by the collar with a grip that could have crushed stone. With a cold, calculated fury, he dragged the quaking man across the barren earth, the sound of gravel crunching underfoot, a brutal percussion to Jackson's final moments of freedom. As the final act of this violent drama came to a close, the gas station clerk, eyes bulging with a mixture of shock and awe, emerged from the shadows of his hiding place, witnessing the end of the story that had unfolded in his humble station. The once fearful customers, emboldened by the spectacle of the Rock's righteous fury, emerged from their hiding places, their initial terror giving way to a sense of exhilaration, as if they had just witnessed the climax of a high-budget Hollywood action movie. With his vengeance delivered and the convicts vanquished, the Rock, like a victorious general, surveying the smoldering wreckage of a hard-fought battle, assessed the damage that had been wrought. Turning his eyes to his once immaculate SUV, now a victim of the convicts' desperation, he let out a weary sigh. The Rock, with a rueful smile. I just got that car detailed. The clerk, an awkward smile illuminating his weathered face like a lone candle in the darkness, stepped forward. A gesture of gratitude and perhaps an attempt to normalize the surreal experience that had unfolded before him. Gas station clerk, with a warm grin. Drinks are on the house. The Rock, chuckling at the absurdity of the offer in light of the destruction around them, shook his head in amused appreciation. The Rock, with a chuckle, I'll take a double espresso. With the wail of police sirens growing steadily louder, a harbinger of the justice soon to arrive, The Rock, his expression a masterclass in controlled stoicism, sauntered back into the gas station. The four convicts, their fates sealed by their hubris and their hatred, now faced the consequences of their actions. Jackson, the ringleader of this fateful encounter, stared up at the sky, his lungs struggling to draw breath, the weight of his defeat bearing down on him like an anvil. And in that moment, as the shadows lengthened and the law inched ever closer, Jackson and his gang of misfits were forced to face the truth. No matter how hard they had fought, how viciously they had clung to their ill-conceived notions of supremacy, they had lost. For them, this encounter with the Rock, a towering icon of strength and fortitude, would forever be seared into their minds, a constant reminder of the painful consequences of prejudice and the unrelenting power of justice. Like a towering pillar, the Rock embodied the essence of true strength. His physical prowess, while formidable, was merely a manifestation of his indomitable spirit, a spirit forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by the unyielding resolve of a man committed to doing what was right. The Rock's presence was a seismic force, one that reverberated beyond mere fisticuffs and grunts of exertion. With a silent dignity, he stood as a bastion against prejudice, a beacon of righteousness in a world marred by hatred and ignorance.